Good evening. Academics and industrialists from multidiscipline. Apart from organizing various seminars, expert talks, and conferences, we have various highly rated multidisciplinary journals in the field of science, engineering, technology, and management. Since our inception, we have been arranged various international conferences at various parts of the world like New York, London, Australia, Hong Kong, Dubai, Bangkok, Kuala Lumpur, India, etc. More than 1 lakh people across the globe are associates with us, and more than 5 lakh research papers have been presented and published during our journey. Today, I'm glad to welcome you all as a member of this fastest growing network for the advancement of science and technology in terms of research and innovation. Today, we were very much fortunate to have an eminent professor and expert who is joining this webinar as an expert speaker and guest. Her name is Dr. Asma Saqib. Presently, she is working as an assistant professor in biochemistry, Maharani Science College for Women, Bangalore. Now I would like to welcome our Professor Dr. Asma Saqib to deliver the webinar.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Today, I am going to speak about modern medicine, the challenges of modern medicine, how modern medicine came into existence, and what is the future of modern medicine. So it is all about drugs of future. It is all about medical treatment in future. Modern medicine came into existence, came into limelight after 18th century with the advent of industrialization. With the advent of industrialization, people started moving out of the home. Industries started, both men and women, they came to the field. They set up, so many instruments were set up. So when people started moving, when they come across with each other, that has led to infectious diseases. And people started searching for treatment of these infectious diseases. To treat these infectious diseases like bronchitis, that is lung related disease, or dermatitis, that is contact disease, that is nothing but one type of skin infection that is caused by fungus. Then there was tuberculosis, then there were some viral fevers. Till today, we are fighting with this viral fever. The entire world is fighting with this pandemic that is called as COVID-19. Till today, there is no cure. Similarly, was the case in 18th century because of industrialization. To treat these infectious diseases, the research was again progressed in 19th century. So 19th century, so many remarkable discoveries happened, like discovery of antibiotic, discovery of double helical mode of DNA. Then there was blood grouping, discovery of blood grouping, discovery of surgery. We know so many things, so much of revolution has started, and that revolution in medical field, it has spread to the entire world because communication was very strong. Before 18th century, we didn't have had any proper means of communication. At the early 19th century, communication was very strong because of discovery of telephone by Alexander Graham Bell. Then postal communication was very fast. Post offices were found everywhere. So all these discoveries has made today's medical system one of the sophisticated medical system all over the world. One of the widely used system that is used all over the world. So what is the treatment? What is the approach which is followed by this medical system? The first we'll see in my presentation. First, I am going to discuss about the current system, the shortcomings of current system, medical system. Later on, we are going to discuss about medicines of future. So the first approach which is followed by medical system is blockbuster medicine. Okay, so blockbuster medicine refers to a very popular medicine. For example, the very popular analgesic drug that is called as paracetamol or acetyl salicylic acid, it is used all over the world, whether it is US, UK, maybe the brand name is different. In India, it is called as aspirin. In some other, in north part of India, it is called as dispirin. If you go to some other countries, it is called by some other name, paracetamol or acetaminophen. There are various names, but the composition of the medicine remains same. That is acetyl salicylic acid. So what we have in aspirin, dispirin, it is nothing but acetyl salicylic acid. And this is the first approach that is followed by modern medical system, that is blockbuster medicine. So this medicine is tested on larger population from all over the world. This medicine will undergo many clinical trials, starting from clinical trial to 1 to clinical trial 4. And when the medicine was at least 80% effective, so it will be approved by FDA, that is Food Development Authority of each country, and it will be used worldwide. So the first approach is about blockbuster medicine. The second approach, what is followed in medical system, is one size fits all approach. Okay, so one size fits all approach refers to, you go to doctor, same medicine. I go to doctor, same medicine. My children go to doctor, same medicine. Your children go to doctor, same medicine. Like medicine is same. The dosage is only going to differ from person to person. For adults, the dosage is strong dose. For children and for old people, the dosage is going to be low, because they have very few drug metabolizing enzyme. So naturally, the dosage has to be less for those people. So this kind of approach, which is creating so many complications in medical system today, that is called as one size fits all approach. It should never be one size fits all approach. So when you go to a mall to buy some clothes, see, all of us, we buy clothes according to our size. We will not take something kept. All of us, we will not take the same cloth. We will buy the cloth according to our size, according to our height, according to our weight. Whereas the medicine, present day medicine, what we have, it is like the same medicine for everybody, only differing in brand name and only differing in dosages. The third approach is increased cost and safety concern without proven efficiency. So for a drug to come into the market, it will take minimum 15 years. It is minimum 15 years. Okay. So why 15 years? Because the drug to pass FDA approval, so it needs 4 stages of clinical assurance, that is called as clinical level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. It is both preclinical and post-clinical testing that has to be done before the drug is released in the market. Okay, and it is not 100% effective drug. At the same time, it is not 100% safe drug. So first of all, it is taking 15 years to release the drug in market. See, now present pandemic, COVID-19, we don't have any exact drug. For some people, plasma therapy works. For some people, remdesivir drug will work. For some other people, some ivermectin, some antiviral drug that is called as ivermectin is going to work. So nobody want to do maximum clinical trial in clinical testing, because it is very difficult to do human clinical trials. It will take lot of time. It will take lot of expenditure. So that's why, so whatever drugs we are using, we need to worry about their cost, and we need to worry about their safety, because their efficiency is not completely proved. Every drug efficiency is not completely proved. We have so many banned drugs in our pharmacies. Okay, pharmacovigilance people, pharmacopoeia people, they are very much worried. They are bringing daily, they are bringing one on rule regulations, so that they can avoid this dumping of waste drugs, or dumping of drugs with maximum side effects. Sorry to say that our pharmacies, they have drugs which have adverse reaction like cancer. Many cancerous drugs are available free of cost without any prescription. Not free of cost, like at a minimal cost without any prescription, drugs are still available. Harmful drugs are still available in pharmacies. There need to be check on this. The fourth current approach what we are following is response rates on drugs still unsatisfactory, varying from 20% to 75%. So whatever drugs we are using, they are not completely effective. So what is a myth? I went to doctor, maybe I went to wrong doctors. Many people will complain, I went to that particular doctor, so whatever treatment he has given, it has not suited me, it was not effective for me. For example, many ladies will complain with gynecology related problems, so they will tell that treatment was not effective. For some people the treatment is effective, for some people the treatment is not effective, because whatever medicine we are using, it is like one size fits all approach. They are following one size fits all approach, and we are pragmatic that maybe this medicine is effective for us, but in reality it is all about our mindset. On a physiological level, on cellular level, the medicine is showing the response. The current treatment is showing the response to 20% to 75%. For example, if we see cancer, for some people cancers are curable. For some people immediately they will die out of cancer. That means what? the drug is effective, the degree of effectiveness of a drug, it will vary from person to person, it will vary from patient to patient. So what is the problem? What risk we are facing with the present medical system? The first is the possibility of a harmful interaction between the medicine and food. See, whatever drug we are taking, it is interacting. It is not at all, I mean, targeting the particular organ or targeting a particular tissue. For some people, it is targeting. For other people, it is interacting with whatever food they are eating. The second risk is the chance that the medicine may not work as expected. For example, for cancer patients or diabetic patients or some thyroid patients, for some people the medicine will work, for some people the medicine may not work, but the doctor is going to prescribe the same medicine, whether it works or whether it doesn't work. For all of us, the treatment is same. We are saving. What is happening all over the world? People, they will do a lot of saving. They will work hard, and as they approach the age of 40 to 50 years, there is a probability that either they should be diabetic, or they should have some thyroid problem, or they should suffer from some cardiovascular diseases. Okay, so whatever saving they have done lifelong, so all the saving will get exhausted at the old age, because the drugs, it may work for some people and it may not work for some people. If it works, okay, life is saved. If it doesn't work, money has also gone and life is also wasted. The third risk is the possibility that the medicine may cause additional problem. So what is the problem with the medical system? So whatever medicines we are taking, they have both useful effects as well as harmful effects. For some people, the useful effects are more. For some people, the harmful effects are more. For example, if for generally for pain, as a painkiller, we use aspirin or we use paracetamol. Of course, they will bring up down the pain. They will bring about the analgesic effect, they will bring about the antipyretic effect, but at the same time they are going to create many side effects in the form of acidity. People who consume so more amount of these painkillers, they are more prone to acidity problem, or if they take more of the drug, possibilities their liver gets damaged. There is a strong possibility the people who consume more of paracetamol as a painkiller, there is a possibility that it will cause side effect. For example, if we see cancer, people will not cancer patients most of the time, in a majority, people will not die of the disease. People will die because of the side effects of drugs whatever they have taken, the radiation, the chemotherapy and the radiation, they will cause so many side effects that will lead to death of a patient rather than the disease. So Aldous Huxley has given a very popular quote on modern medicine, where he said, medical science has made such tremendous progress that there is hardly a healthy human left. We are taking medicine, we know about the balanced diet today, all are following green mantra. Some nutritionists, they suggest vegan food, some nutritionists, they suggest non-vegan food. We have one more diet today nowadays to lose weight, that is called as keto diet. All these diets are there, all these nutraceuticals are there, all these technologies are there. Technologies are so much advanced, diagnosis is so much effective, but still Huxley, he has quoted that medical science has made such a tremendous progress that there is hardly a healthy human left. There has to be, every person, he has to or she has to, they have to come across one or other disease. They have to get infected with one or other disease. Okay. So how to overcome this? So what is happening with the medical system? So whenever we take a drug, it is having, as I told you earlier, it is having both the effect, that is side effect as well as adverse effect. So there is a difference between side effect and adverse effect. Adverse effects are very harmful effects that will lead to death, that will lead to undesirable changes, whereas side effects, they can be eliminated, they can be ignored. For example, what is said, when we take aspirin, there is 100% possibility that along with the analgesic effect or pain killing effect, it is also going to cause acidity problem. It is going to damage the the wall, the gastric wall inside the stomach. Adverse effect is what? Very harmful. It will lead to take you are the patient is taking the drug to treat the disease, but what is happening, the same drug, it is acting as a poison. So recently I came to know, so one of my relative who undergone eye surgery, he undergone some eye surgery and doctor has prescribed some drug. So while taking the treatment, he was discharged, he went to home. So he got treated, he was getting very good vision, the treatment was successful. But immediately the patient has started pain, and he continued the same drug. The same drug, instead of acting as a medicine, it acted as a poison, and that relative of mine, he lost vision. This is called as adverse effect. You ask a patient, cancer patients, they will get more adverse effect, so rather than the useful effect from anti-cancerous drugs. So all the cancers are not treatable, all kind of cardiovascular problems are not treatable. See what is happening today, people are taking pill for each and everything. For diabetes, one pill; for cardiovascular problem, one pill; for thyroid disorders, one more pill. Because these problems, they have become very common. Everybody, they need to have. When a patient go to doctor, the doctor will ask, you have BP problem, are you are diabetic, or you have to, you're a thyroid patient, you have to tell me, because according to the condition of the patient, the doctor is going to prescribe drug. So we are following the green mantra. We are physically fit, we have so many gadgets to help us to maintain our health. So in spite of that, the drugs are showing both side effects as well as adverse effects. So if you see the chemotherapy, that is the treatment in case of cancers, there are so many cancerous drugs that is called as idarubicin, or clofarabin, or basulfan, or tinaposide. They are having so many effects. They are treating, they are helping in the treatment of cancer. At the same time, how much side effect they are causing? They are causing almost 96% to 81% side effect. On an average, it will start from 33% to 96%. The same, the drug which is meant for treatment, it is causing some adverse reaction, that is life threatening reaction, that is called as infection, nausea, vomiting, leukopenia, or lymphopenia, or thrombocytopenia, or mucosal inflammation. Okay, so it is very difficult. We don't want this kind of medicine, okay, which is we are what we mindset we have. We perhaps we are thinking that this medicine is going to treat the patient, but we are very, it is very sad affair that instead of treating the patient, it is also causing some harmful effect. For example, the people who have diabetes, so probability is there, their kidneys will fail, because whatever the drugs they're taking for the treatment of diabetes, those drugs in excess, or as adverse reaction of the drug, or a side reaction of that drug, their kidneys will also get damaged. Okay, so how do these drugs works in body? Before we understand about the future of the drugs, so let us understand how does these medicines they are going to work in our body. So these medicines, when we take, it is absorbed into the blood and distributed around the body. The drug reaches a peak level, so soon after that, the drug level falls steadily as it eliminates from the body. Okay, so when we take the drug, it has to get absorbed, it has to get distributed, it has to follow a phenomenon called as ADMI, that is adsorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion. So once the drug activity is over, then the drug needs to get eliminated from the body, so that is assisted by liver and kidney. That is different aspect. We need to worry about how this drug enters into our body. So once this drug enters into our body, so how it is going to help us to fight against infection. So when we take the drug, the first thing how it is going to help in fighting the infection is by, it will interfere with microorganisms that invade your body. So whatever drug we are taking, it will arise some kind of immune response. It will help in the synthesis of antibodies. It will increase the production of antibodies, and the microorganisms, they are nothing but germs, they are nothing but antigens. So these antigens, they will fight with antibody, and they will bring about some change in the body, the desired reaction, the undesirable effect of the microorganism, the invading microorganism. So it will be eliminated by means of the desired reaction which is shown by drug. For example, antiviral infection. Presently, everybody is coming across antiviral infection. So whenever antiviral infection is there, the patient will take some antiviral pill. Okay, so this antiviral pill, it will enter in the body, it will get distributed in the body, it will get absorbed in the body, and it is going to help, it is going to kill the virus, or it is going to decrease the viral load in the body. Okay, the second action what the drug is doing, it is destroying the abnormal cells that cause cancer. Cancer is nothing but uncontrolled production of cells in our body. So our cells, the body cells, they have unique lifespan. So they will survive till their their lifespan is destined. But in case of cancer, due to some kind of mutation in the gene, the components of the cell which are supposed to perform their function, so they themselves they will start eating each other. So in case of blood cancer, for example, the white blood cells which are supposed to bring about, which are supposed to provide defense to the body, so they themselves, instead of eating the dead and decay matter of the body, they will start eating the cell itself. So thus they will cause cancer. The third function what drug is do, it will replace the deficient substances such as hormones or vitamins. For example, in case of diabetes is nothing but deficiency of insulin. So insulin has to be, doesn't have the capacity to synthesize sufficient insulin, to secrete sufficient insulin. So that insulin need to be artificially, it should be provided, it should be compensated. Similarly, in case of hypothyroidism, the thyroid glands, they are not able to secrete complete thyroxine, or there may be a problem with the secretion of thyroxine. So what a patient will do, early morning he will take a pill which is nothing but thyroxine, artificial thyroxine. So that these drugs, they are providing the thyroxine in the form of drug. It is going to help hypothyroid patient. Or metformin tablet in case of diabetes, it is going to replace, it is going to do the function of insulin. The fourth function what drug will do inside the body, it changes the way that cells work in our body. Okay, suppose if due to some injury inflammation is there, so when we take a drug for inflammation, it will enter the body and it will reduce the inflammation in the body. So the cell which is bringing about the inflammation, so this drug, it will go and it will show some anti-inflammatory effect, that is called as non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs. Paracetamol is a very good example for NSAID, or ibuprofen is a very good example of NSAID. So what they will do, they will go and they will ask the cell to stop the synthesis of prostaglandins, which were bringing about the inflammation. So this is how, with a diagram, you can understand it very easily. So when a pill is taken or a drug is taken, so it will be absorbed, it will be distributed everywhere in the body. So usually the drugs are metabolized in liver. Okay, so once they are metabolized in the liver, they will bring about the desired reaction, required reaction. So once their activity is over, they're excreted by means of kidney. So this metabolism of drugs in the liver, that will not happen naturally. There are so many enzymes involved in this pathway, and a very popular enzyme which will bring about the metabolism of this drug, it is nothing but cytochrome 450 enzyme. Okay, so the people who are having high level of this cytochrome 450, yes, majority of the drugs, so whether it is drug for diabetes, drug for cancer, or drug for thyroid, or drug for some injury, whatever the drugs we take, so majority of the drugs, they are metabolized by an enzyme that is called as cytochrome P450, that is present in the liver. So the level of cytochrome 450 in the body, it is going to decide whether the metabolism of the drug whatever you have taken, whether it is a effective drug or non-effective drug. People who are having more high concentration of the cytochrome P450 enzymes, so their metabolism will be very high. And if they take a drug in lower dosages also, no problem. The action of the drug will be very beneficial. Whereas people who are deficient in the cytochrome P450 enzyme in the liver, so their metabolism will be very poor and they are more susceptible to diseases. For example, if we see the COVID-19 infection, which has created chaos all over the world, so we can see that some people are susceptible to this disease, whereas some people are not. Even if some people are infected with the COVID-19 infection, if they are given a treatment either at home in the isolation, the isolation itself, they were recovered. No need to go to hospital. At home isolation only many people will recover, because their immunity will be very strong. That is nothing but the concentration of the amount of cytochrome P450 present in their liver, which is required for metabolism of drugs, it is very very high. Whereas for people in whose liver is a organ which is the largest factory of our body. It is a big machine of our body, which will perform majority of the functions in our body. Even if we are sleeping, the liver will work. See, all our cells, all the organs in our body system, they will keep on working continuously. We may relax, we may sleep, but they never sleep. The moment they sleep, that is called as death. Now, knowing about the drugs, knowing about the mechanism of action of the drugs. So now we need to understand what are the challenges to the modern medicine, why modern medicine is not so effective. So many advancements are there, so many robots have come, so many doctors are come, medical colleges are nothing but synthesizing factory of doctors. So much of research is going on all around the world, all the countries all over the world, they are investing billions, trillions of money to treat these infections. So in spite of that, treatment is incomplete, treatment is not so effective. Maybe it may be effective to 50 to 60%, but treatment is not effective. Many are dying out of infection. If you take the recent pandemic COVID-19, it has created mortality, high mortality rate all over the world. Every family, one or other member, they have lost it. They have lost it. Things were out of control during this pandemic. So that means infections, viral infections are still threat. So what are the major challenges which are faced by medical system? The first challenge is analysis of illness at cell level. So what we know today, it is nothing but about the disease. Some paradigm shift is required in understanding of diseases. I'm telling paradigm shift. Paradigm shift refers to a fundamental change. A change at root level is required so that these infections can be treated. People are dying simply out of a fever that is called as chikungunya fever. People die out of influenza fever. People die out of H1 fever. Of course, we are so much advanced. We are aspiring to reach stars, we are aspiring to shift to Mars, we are aspiring to enjoy our holidays in space, but at this with the same degree, okay, we are prone to illnesses. So that means what, we need to follow an approach which will treat the illness at cellular level. So what we have today, it is one size fits all approach. So this one size fits all approach will not work for entire population. It may work only for few people. Okay, we'll discuss later why it will work for some people and why it will not work for some people. So anything need to be corrected, it has to be corrected at molecular level, it need to be corrected at cellular level. So that is the first challenge of a modern medical system. The second challenge is longer lifespan equals more people with dementia. Dementia is a health issue which is haunting Western countries. If you go to US and UK, the average lifespan it is between 85 to 90 years, whereas in India the average lifespan is 70 to 75 years. All are living, but what kind of life we are leading? We are leading a diseased life. Ask everybody, you see, just take a survey in your surrounding, everybody is infected with one or other disease. Gastritis has become so common. Okay, the people whose lifespan goes more than 40 to 50 years, 100% possibility that either they should be diabetic, or they should be a BP patient, or they should be a thyroid patient, or something one or other thing, they should have infection. So what is the need of that kind of lifespan? So longer lifespan in the Western countries, it is giving rise to two major diseases that is called as dementia. Dementia is a blanket term that refers to loss of functions of brain, which will result in two major diseases. The one is Alzheimer's disease, the second one is Parkinson's disease. So in case of these dementia patients, okay, they don't remember the things. Half an hour early, whatever they ate, after half an hour they'll feel hungry, they don't remember. There is no coordination between their body organs, there is no coordination in their activities. So what is the point in leading that kind of life, and what is the point in leading such a long lifespan? So scientists, researchers, they want to increase, they're working in the lab day and night so that the lifespan, recently I read in one of the newspaper article that lifespan is going to be more than 150 years. Earlier, our ancestors, they used to live more than 100 years, but that 100 years used to be a very happy life. It used to be a very healthy life. But today, most of the Western country lab, they are investing trillions of money to understand the mechanism of dementia. So one of the major challenge before the medical sciences, modern medical sciences, is to answer how to cure dementia. The third problem is aging is still mystery. We have not understood, the researchers, they have not understood why we age. What is the definition of aging? Some people they will age very early, some people they will age very lately. Okay, so what is the need of aging? Is aging required? I want to be young and fresh always, I want to remain as it is, but is it possible? Yes, scientists are working on this field. They want to minimize the aging. They want to increase the lifespan. But the problem is, we know what we have understood about aging, the chromosomes in our body, their ends, that is called as telomeres. If the telomere size starts decreasing, that is called as aging. Okay, so scientists are day and night, they are working in the laboratories to retain the size of those telomeres in the chromosome. So in future, we may see individual without aging. The fourth challenge is the obesity epidemic is still a great threat, and maybe genetics make us fat. Obesity is a very common problem. Nearly 50% population of the world is infected with the epidemic that is called as obesity. The same food. So some people, they eat, so a group of people, if we, when literature is done, a survey is done, where in a group, the individuals were given same food, okay, day and night, in the lunch, they were given same food. Some people became obese, and some people, they remain as it is. Some people, they have tendency to store fat, and some people, they have tendency to mobilize that fat. So what is the reason for this obesity? Is it in our hands to control obesity? Okay, so we are nowadays, we have very good concept of a balanced diet. We have understood about nutrition. We have understood that we should consume more of proteins and we should consume less of carbohydrates. So in spite of following all these healthy mantras, in spite of sticking on to the concept of greens, okay, concept of a vegan diet, so many people all over the world are obese, especially the children. They are more prone to obesity and BP problem, that is blood pressure and cardiovascular problems. They also started emerging in children. And this obesity, it is what researchers have understood. This obesity, it is not only about eating, it is about the lifestyle diseases. Okay, it's a lifestyle disease. It has to be, I mean, there is a relationship between obesity and the environment. If somebody in the family, they are obese, there are possibilities that the next progeny will also be obese. The future progenies will also be obese. The pregnant lady, if she has not taken sufficient nutrition during her pregnancy and the child delivered is thin, there is a possibility that that child will become obese in future. Okay. That means epigenetics is nothing but interaction of gene with the environment. The external environment, it is having some influence on our survival. It is having influence on our physical appearance. It is having influence on your health. Okay, so these are the challenges the medical science need to answer. It need to answer. So what is, I mean, research, so much of research is going on, and now researchers and practitioners, they have understood that the treatment of the disease, it has to be at cellular level, it has to be at gene level. Okay, it has to, it never it has to be superficial. Okay, it has never, it has to be like a one size fits all approach. So we need to have a paradigm shift, and we need to have a pragmatic approach for treatment of to solve all these challenges, to answer all these challenges. For example, if we take a drug, if we speak about a drug that is called as codeine. Codeine is nothing but a narcotic drug. So it is a painkiller. So it is given, most of the time it is given to treat brain related disorders. It is one of the very popular analgesia. So if we see this codeine is, I mean, the function of this codeine is influenced by a gene that is called as CYP3A4. Codeine is a very popular drug. It's a narcotic drug. So this codeine, it has to get converted into morphine. So if this codeine gets converted into morphine, then that the effect of the drug will be very high. Okay, so this conversion of codeine to morphine, it varies from individual to individual because it is controlled by gene. It is controlled by two genes. So one gene is called as CYP3A4. The other gene is called as CYP2D6. So the individuals who have this gene that is called as CYP2D6 gene, so they are able to convert this codeine into active form that is called as morphine. See, whatever drugs we take, they are present in prodrug form in the sense inactive form. Whatever drugs we are taking, so we are taking in an active form, that is prodrug form, they will enter into our body. So generally they will enter into liver. So in liver, cytochrome P450 enzymes will be there, and these enzymes, they are going to convert that codeine into morphine, and morphine, it will bring about the desired change. So the people who have this gene that is called as CYP2D6 gene, all will not have the CYP2D6 gene, all will not have many copies of this CYP2D6 gene. So whoever they are having the gene, the lucky guys, so immediately their codeine will get converted into morphine, and morphine will bring about the desired analgesic effect. So you might have heard people telling, see, one of my family member, he has undergone surgery and surgery was successful. Some people will complain, I have spent so much of money to do the treatment, to do the surgery, so in spite of that, my family member, he died out of infection. That means what? So for some people the infection, the medicine is working, and for some people the medicine is not working. So many people, they survived out of pandemic that is called as COVID-19, and so many people, majority of the people, they also died because of COVID-19. Okay, there is one more popular drug whose metabolism we need to understand about the mechanism of action of drug, that is called as warfarin drug. Warfarin drug, it is used for the treatment of cardiovascular diseases. It will dissolve the blood clot. It is widely prescribed for prevention of thromboembolic events, that is blood clotting. It will prevent the blood clotting in the patients who are suffering from cardiovascular diseases. Sorry. So what happens in the cardiovascular diseases? The flow of blood will not be proper. Their blood will become thick because their arteries will be clogged by fat. Okay, so their blood needs to get thin. There should be proper flow of blood. There should not be any formation of clot. If there is a formation of clot, so that will lead to some kind of complications, and ultimately it will end up in heart arrest, that is cardiac problem. So if we see this drug that is called as warfarin, it is having narrow therapeutic index. That means, so it is not widely used. So it is used only in very specific conditions, like wherever clotting is there, wherever there is formation, there is a chance of formation of blood clot, wherever BP problem is high. So only in these quick cases, this warfarin is used. So this warfarin drug, it is having 20-fold individual dose variation due to gene variation in gene that is called as CYP2C9 and VCO-ORC1. Okay, so these are the two genes. So depending upon the amount of these genes, depending upon the copies of these genes, we'll discuss later what are genes. So depending upon the mechanism of actions of these genes, the doctor is going to fix the dosage for this drug that is called as warfarin. Because if underdosing is done, so 100% if the patient is treated with cardiovascular problem, there is a possibility the doctor has to suggest warfarin drug. It is a very popular drug, a blockbuster drug. Okay, so if underdosing is done for this drug, so that will lead to thromboembolic events. If overdosing is done, then it will lead to bleeding. Okay, because this drug is going to interact with more than 800 drugs. So what is the peculiarity of this warfarin? This warfarin, it is aloof, it will not go and it will finish its action and come back. It is going to interact with other drugs. Okay, so when it interacts with other drugs, for example, it interacts with one of the analgesic drug that is called as amiodarone. So when it interacts with amiodarone, it is going to inhibit the action of gene that is called as CYP2C9. So that means the doctor, before prescribing warfarin, he need to know what is the gene composition, how many copies of the genes are present. So according to the copies of gene, the doctor is supposed to prescribe the medicine. That is not happening presently. Okay, so this is the literature survey, what is obtained, that has been done for this drugs, that is cardiovascular drugs, that is called as warfarin and coumadrin. So it says that 7% of millions of patients taking the anti-clotting drug warfarin suffer complications in the first month, that is called as atrial fibrillation complication, or poor pumping by blood by one of the heart of upper chamber. Okay, so if one is taking warfarin, there's 100% possibilities that the individual will also have some side effect. So how warfarin should be given? Warfarin should be given in either in the increased dose, or it should be given in intermediate dose, or it should be given in lower doses depending upon the genetic makeup of an individual. that is CYP2D6 gene will decide how much warfarin should be given. On an average, 65 out of 100 people, if I take an average of 100 people, for 65% people, the dosage should be high. For 32 people, the dosage should be intermediate, and 3 out of 100 people, the dosage should be very low. So how to face these challenges? I have shown you with example these two drugs. They are giving us challenge, that is codeine and warfarin. How to face the challenges of these drugs? How to come out of the complications? Okay, how to come out of the adverse reaction of this drug? Okay, so these adverse reactions of the drug, they can be answered by a new field of science that is called as pharmacogenomics. It is called as pharmacogenomics. So pharmacogenomics, it's a new, branch of science which combines the effect of two branches of biology, that is called as pharmacology and genomics. It is pharmacology and genomics. Pharmacology, what is pharmacology? The study of drugs. The science of drug is called as pharmacology. If any pharma patient is there, they will be familiar with the term. Genomics refers to the study of size, structure, and function of the genes. So that means what? So whatever we have understood, we need to understand at molecular level. If the treatment has to be done, the treatment has to be done at molecular level. It has to be done at cellular level. What is cellular level? What is there in the cellular level? We have at cellular level our genes. Okay. So we know the cell is nothing but structural and functional unit of all the living organism. It is a basic fundamental structure of all the living organisms. So when we speak about drugs, we are speaking about only about the living organism. So to treat this living organism, to treat the cell, we need to provide a drug. So in cell, we have nucleus. So inside nucleus, the genetic material is present in the form of chromosome. So the chromosome, so in turn, they are going to, these chromosomes in turn, they are made up of genes. Okay. So this is, as you can see in the screen, this is a cell. This cell, it is made up of nucleus. Nucleus is made up of chromosomes. So chromosomes, they are nothing but they are made up of thick strands of DNA. Okay, so anything need to be answered, it has to be answered at this gene level. It has to be answered at DNA level. So what are the principles this pharmacogenomic approach will follow? This approach will follow, this is a very pragmatic approach. This will bring about the desired change. This bring about the hope in the modern system of medicine. This approach, these principles, they can help us to fight dangerous infections, what the humanity is facing today, the disasters we are facing today. So they can be answered to the infectious diseases is can be done by making use of two principles of pharmacogenomics. The first one is how much of a drug is needed to reach its target in the body. The pharmacogenomics, the branch of science which deals about the science of drug and the science of gene. It is going to it is based on two principles. The first principle is how much of a drug is needed to reach its targets in the body. You go to doctor, I go to doctor. The profession doctors, what they follow, it is called as medical practice. It is practice, it is trial and error method. So some patient goes to the doctor, he may prescribe some drugs, but those drugs may not work on that patient. So the doctor will get some idea that this will not help. So when the next patient comes, he will try something else, some other kind of treatment. Okay, so what is required? So that doctor is called as medical practitioner. Okay, so what is required? First we need to know how much of drug is needed, because if required drug is given, there is no side effects, there are no adverse effect. If a drug is given in more concentration, or if it is given in low dosages, there is a possibility that patient will come across some side effects, or patient will come across some adverse reaction. The second principle is how well the target cells such as heart, tissue, or neurons respond to that drug. So whatever drugs we have, are they target specific? If the patient is taking something for treatment of kidney, if he is having some kidney infection, if he is having some dialysis problem, is it going to help only on my work on the kidney, or is it also targeting lungs? Is it required when the patient is having problem with kidney? The drug should treat only kidney. The drug should not treat lungs. It should not create any adverse reaction in the lungs. So whatever drugs we have, they need to be target specific. First, the drugs need to be dosage specific. The second is the drug need to be target specific. So based on these two principles, the pharmacogenomics, It is having a strong future in the field of medicine. To understand about this pharmacogenomics, we need to understand about the genes in detail. Okay, what is the function of this gene? What is the composition of these genes? So genes are nothing but the condensed form of chromosomes in the cell. We have so many cells in our body, and we have nearly 20 to 25,000 functional genes in our body. So these genes, they are condensed in the form of chromosome. We human beings, we have so much of these genes, so much of chromosomes, so much of DNA. The genetic material which is present in the chromosome, it is called as gene, and DNA, and this DNA is nothing but double helical polynucleotide strand. So the structure of the double helical mode of DNA, it is very beautifully given by Watson and Crick. So this part of this DNA is nothing but gene, and gene is the one which is going to direct all the physiological functions of our body. So this DNA, if you see, it's a polynucleotide double helical strand. It is made up of four nucleotide bases, that is adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine, and they will pair very beautifully according to Chargaff's law. So the pairing should be adenine should always pair with thymine by two double bonds, whereas guanine should pair with cytosine by triple bond. So it has to be like this only. These molecules, these nucleic acids, they are called as biomolecules. They are the basic molecules which will make up the life. So when we see these biomolecules, so all the mechanism is systematic. Everything is set. It has to be systematic. If it is, if any deviation in this the structure of DNA, it will lead to variation. It will lead to disease. So disease is not the what the symptoms we are seeing. Disease is if you are getting a cough. Okay, that if a patient is getting a cough, it doesn't mean that the problem is only related to lungs. Problems are related to so many other parts of the body. The patient is getting fever, it doesn't mean that it is a simple fever. So this fever or cough or cold, so they are nothing but biomarkers. They are going to tell us there is something wrong in your body. If fever prolongs more than 3 days, that means it is giving alarm that something wrong is happening in the body. If cough prolongs more than 1 week, there is a possibility that patient will get tuberculosis. So this kind of signals, they are called as biomarkers, and pharmacogenomics, it is going to give us very good idea about biomarkers. So I was speaking about genes are a very beautiful part of our cell. Okay, so this gene, it is going to decide so what should happen to our body. We have nearly 22,000 genes in human body. The humans, they are called by a scientific name that is called as a homo sapien. So in the homo sapien, in every cell, the humans, they will have nearly 20 to 20,000 genes. So these genes, they are arranged in the form of chromosomes. So this, we have nearly 23 pairs of chromosome, where 22 chromosomes are autosomes, which are going to define our body physiology, how we appear or how we should work. And remaining the last pair of chromosome, it is not it is nothing but sex chromosome, which is going to define, which is going to decide whether the organism, it is going to be male or female. So this, if we see this gene in detail, these genes, they have very beautiful arrangement, very beautiful chemistry. So they have nucleotides where adenine has to pair with guanine, and adenine has to pair with thymine, and guanine, it has to pair with cytosine. So any variation in this pairing, I hope it is very much visible on the screen. Any variation in this pairing, suppose A instead of pairing with T, if it pairs with G, then that means something wrong is going to happening, because these genes, they are going to code for proteins. The genes, that is nothing but DNA. A part of DNA is nothing but gene. This DNA, which is present in the cell, in the nucleus. So this DNA, it is going to code for protein, and it is protein which are going to bring about all the physiological function. We have studied the various functions of proteins. Okay, so the proteins, they are secretory in nature. They are nothing but enzymes. They are nothing but antibodies. They will help in transport in the form of hemoglobin, myoglobin. So these proteins, they will perform variety of functions in our body. So how these proteins generated? They are generated from DNA. So this kind of mechanism where DNA is going to code for protein, it is called a central dogma of molecular biology, where DNA, the information on the DNA, it is transcribed on RNA by transcription, and the information on RNA, it is translated into the language of protein. Such a beautiful mechanism. Okay, this is central dogma of molecular biology. This is about the protein synthesis. So it is the protein which is going to decide how the organism will be. So what the function of how the organism is going to work, whether the organism will be metabolically active, metabolically inactive, how the organism should appear. It should appear very tall, or it should appear very short, or whether the organism he should be smart or not so smart. Everything is decided by a molecule, very important molecule in our body, that is called as protein. So that protein, it is the structure of the protein, it is decided by DNA. DNA is nothing, a part of DNA is nothing but gene which is present in nucleus of the cell. So any variation in the structure of this protein, it will lead to variation. So that variation is called as DNA polymorphism. Okay, so any variation in the structure of protein. So this should be the sequence. That is, A should pair with D and G should pair with C. So any variation will here, any variation in the structure will bring about the variation in protein also. So that will end up with a malfunction protein. So this is what's seen in case of Alzheimer's patients, and this is also seen in case of cancerous patients, where they have defective protein compared to other people. So this defective protein is going to cause disease. So why this variation? This variation is because this variation in DNA, that is called as DNA polymorphism. It is because of three reasons. The first one is variation in the fragment length of DNA, which is that fragment length is varied due to digesting by enzymes, DNA cutting enzyme, that is called as restriction enzyme. The second one is variation in the size of a DNA fragment. The third one is variation in the DNA sequence itself. So you can see on the screen, you can see three birds are there. Their body size is same, their height is same, their body weight is same, but they differ from each other in their facial features. This is due to DNA polymorphism. Maybe the gene in this is the gene. So this gene sequence may be different in all these three organisms. So one more variation, if you see among the humans, we all of us, we have different faces. This is also one of the magic of Almighty. So all of us, we are blessed with the different faces, and our face is nothing but our asset. So this change in the face of every individual, this is called as variation, and this is called as phenotypic variation. Phenotypic variation is also due to change in the sequence of gene. Okay, if that variation was not there, all of us could have been similar, like this, identical twins. All the faces could have been similar. All of us may appear similar, but that is not the thing. So we have variation. See, the Caucasian population, facial structure, facial symmetry is different. If you go to Western countries, facial symmetry is different. If you come to Asian continent, the symmetry is different because the variation in genes. So this variation in genes, it is called as polymorphism. So how much of variation we have? We have variation, we have similarity in our genes. What I was speaking about these genes. Okay, so if we see the genes, we have nearly 20 to 22,000 genes in our body. So 99.9% our genes are similar, and variation is seen only in 0.1%. And this, I repeat once again, 99%, 99.9% our genomes are similar, our genes are similar. So dissimilarity is seen only in 0.1%. So that dissimilarity will cause this kind of variation. Okay? That dissimilarity will cause this type of variation. How much variation? It is just 0.1% variation. Okay, so what is the reason for variation? One very common reason for variation in the DNA is nothing but single nucleotide polymorphism, or SNPs or SNPs. Okay, so this SNPs or SNPs is nothing but a change in one of the sequence of these genes. This is the sequence. Okay, so if you see the sequence GCA, so this GCA is called as triplet code. So this triplet code, it has to code for amino acid, and amino acid will give rise to proteins. So this, there will be variation in GCA. Maybe instead of GCA, it may be GAA, or it may be GAG, or some change in this C molecule, or some change in this A alphabet, or some change, single change in this A alphabet, C alphabet, or G alphabet. It is going to cause a disaster. It is going to cause variation. Of course, variations are very good. Variations have given rise to evolution. If there is no variation, we remember the very popular example of Lamarckian theory, where he spoke about giraffe. Okay, giraffe, in the process of evolution, they have stretched their neck, their genes have undergone variation, because giraffe, that time in Lamarckian time, they didn't had food to eat on the ground. It was grass, so it was not available. So whatever food giraffe can eat, it was available only on the tall trees. So to eat the food on the tall trees, the giraffe was supposed to extend the neck. So in the process of evolution, it started stretching, and now present days giraffe, it is having a very longer neck. So if variations are useful, so no problem, it is going to help in the adaptation of organism. If variations are harmful, then it will give rise to a disastrous condition in organism. For example, diabetes, what we see today, the metabolic diseases like diabetes, or thyroid, or cancers, they are all because of variation in the gene. And very popular form of variation in the genome is nothing but SNPs, or single nucleotide polymorphism. And we can make use of this phenomenon. So what a doctor has to do, the present day and future day doctor has to do, a researcher has to do. So he has to, if patient goes to a doctor, the doctor has to see the gene sequence of organism. He should not see only the external appearance of organism, the external science of the organism. See, earlier when a patient go to doctor used to hold the pulse of the patient, then he will ask the patient to open the eyes and open the tongue. Today, a patient going to doctor, the doctor will ask for diagnostic test. The doctor will ask for X-rays, scans, MRI scan, CT scan. So depending upon this diagnostic report, diagnostic test, the doctor is going to prescribe medicine. Earlier, just by seeing the pulse, the doctor used to prescribe medicine. So in future, the doctor will see the genetic sequence. He will see if any single nucleotide polymorphism is there. So this single nucleotide polymorphism, it is going to identify disease-causing genes in humans, and to understand the inter-individual variation in drug response. So this is how single nucleotide polymorphism appears in gene. So where one of the nucleotide sequence, it will be replaced by some other nucleotide. So this variation in the nucleotide, it may be by addition, or it may be by deletion, or it may be substitution. Addition is what you take the DNA. When I go to when a patient go to a doctor will see the genetic sequence of the patient, and he will identify the gene, and he will maybe doctors of the future, they will be able to see there is something missing in the gene. So some nucleotide is missing in the gene. So what the researcher will do, he will try to add that missing nucleotide. So this is called as single nucleomorphism by addition. The second one is by deletion. This I am showing you picture of two rats. These two rats which are treated with Huntington's disease. First of all, they were infected with a genetic problem that is called as Huntington disease. So later on, it is studied that there is some gene in the rats, some nucleotide is there. So that nucleotide is a defective nucleotide. So better to remove that, excise that defective nucleotide. That is called as deletion, nucleotide deletion. The third one is called as substitution. Substitution is what? So the researcher will be knowing. So in future, the doctor, he has to be researcher. The doctor, he need to have very good knowledge of genomics, very good knowledge of pharmacogenomics. It is not only when we say the medical system, medical system is not only about the doctors, the medical system is about the pharmacist, it is about the biochemist, it is about the microbiologist, it is about the medical practitioner. So it is going to be a teamwork. Today also it is teamwork, but it is not 100% teamwork. In future, the medical system, what we see, it will be a mixed group of healthcare professionals. Okay, it will be a team of all kind of researchers. All will be required. People are required to sequence the genome. People are required to read the gene. People need to understand the gene, and people are required to play with this gene. So how they can play? They can bring about addition, they can bring about deletion, or they can bring about the substitution of some nucleotides in the genes. Okay, so what happens whenever there is single nucleotide polymorphism, or whenever the gene undergoes changes like addition, deletion, or substitution? These are very common phenomenon in case of single nucleotide polymorphism. The gene will undergo gene mutations. So very good example of gene mutation by substitution is sickle cell anemia. See, all of us, we have genes. the same genes. I said 99.9% of our genomes are similar, and only 0.01% of our genomes are similar. We have almost all the genes for everything. Okay, we have the genes for cancer, we have genes for diabetes, we have genes for thyroid, we have healthy genes. At the same time, we also have unhealthy genes. Provided the suitable environmental condition, the unhealthy genes express. Provided the unhealthy lifestyle, the unhealthy genes will express. So one such example is nothing but sickle cell anemia, where there will be just substitution of one amino acid with another, I mean one nucleotide with another nucleotide. Okay, so in case of sickle cell anemia, the patients RBCs, they are not able to carry the hemoglobin pigment, carry the blood from one part of the body to another part of the body, because the RBCs which are supposed to be oval, they will become sickle shape. So when they become sickle shape, it decreases their capacity to carry the blood from one part of body to another part of the body. So to start with, they will live healthy life, but as the age proceed, the patient is going to die. So what is required? So the requirement of present day medicine and future medicine, it is treatment of patients, treatment of people with genetic approach, a pragmatic gene approach. So I have listed the 3 applications of pharmacogenomics. First, to tailor the treatments to meet the patient's unique genetic predisposition and identifying optimal dosing. The second one is improved drug discovery targeted to human disease. And third application is improve proof of principles for efficacy of trials. So whatever shortcomings we are getting in our present modern approach of medicine, so those shortcomings can be eliminated by means of applications of pharmacogenomics. So let me discuss each application in detail. The first one is tailor treatment to meet patient's unique genetic predisposition and identifying optimal medicine. So this is expressed by a beautiful concept of medicine that is called as personalized medicine. So this photo I have taken from my special issue of the Times magazine. So where they have given by in the year 2015. So they mention about when Barack Obama, he proposed human genome project and a personalized medicine. So this information was published everywhere in almost all parts of the world. So this personalized medicine, it is going to be the future of drugs. These are very amazing medicines, because these amazing medicines, they are based on DNA and genetic composition. Okay, and they are going to change the perception of patient, and they are going to change the perception of healthcare individual. So these personalized medicine these are very challenging medicine. They are a very interesting branch of science. This is nothing but the future of medical sciences. All the present day practitioners, they have to equip, they have to understand this concept that is called as personalized medicine, which is the application of pharmacogenomics. So this personalized medicine or precision medicines or stratified medicine or individualized medicine is a medical model that separate peoples into different groups. Okay, so that means what? When people go to doctor, so doctor will not give the same drug to everybody, so he will treat the patients as individuals. He will treat the patient differently. A different patient, every individual will be given different treatment depending upon the genetic makeup of that person. So that means what? If 2 patients are there, that is patient A and patient B. So patient A will be given, depending upon the genetic makeup of the patient A, the patient A will be given different drug, whereas patient B will be given different drug. And the doctors are here, they are not following that. They will not follow. They are not supposed to follow this one size fits all approach. It should be like one size will not fit all. So what they have to assume, one size will not fit all. So with the treatment in case of personalized medicine, it is going to be individualized medicine. Okay, like how we have today designer clothes. We will like to wear designer sarees, designer clothes, designer suits. So similar in future, we are going to have designer medicine, designer babies. There is a possibility that in future the couples will design their own babies. They will take treatment at the gene level, at the DNA level. For example, if they want a face like celebrity, and they can go for an IQ level like Einstein. Okay, so that possibility is there. To that level, the personalized medicine is advanced. So that means what? The treatment and the dosage, it is going to be different from one patient to another patient. So what are the applications of this kind of approach? The first application is personalized medicine shifts the emphasis in medicine from the reaction to prevention. See, Ayurveda speaks about prevention. Alternative medicines like Chinese medicine or Arabic medicine or Unani medicine or Korean medicine, they will speak about prevention, whereas our modern day medicine, it will speak about reaction. Modern day medicine is used for emergencies, whereas alternative medicine and traditional medicines, they're used for prevention. So when we see Ayurvedic, it's a beautiful system of medicine, that is Ayurvedic medicine or Unani medicine, they will speak about prevention, because whatever medicines we are eating, they are nothing but food substitutes. They are food itself. The food is going to act as medicine. Ayurveda says that food should be taken as medicine, then medicine will become food. Okay, food should be consumed as medicine, so we should be very particular like what food we are eating. So what is the approach that is followed by personalized medicine? Personalized medicine, they are going to shift the focus from reaction to prevention and predict susceptibility or disease. So personalized medicine in future, it is going to tell us like which individual is susceptible to which disease. Before the disease comes, the patient will go with his genome hand, genetic sequence in hand, and the doctor is going to tell in future which are the diseases he's going to face. For example, a very popular example of personalized medicine, it is about a Hollywood actress, Angelina Jolie. Angelina Jolie's mother, she was a patient of ovarian cancer, and when her genome sequence for her, there is a possibility people who have cancer, there is a possibility that their progeny will also be they are likely to get cancer. So Angelina Jolie, she was having the possibility to inherit the disease from her, that is ovarian cancer or breast cancer. So she went for mastectomy. Mastectomy is nothing but removal of breast. Later on, she came to know if one breast she get excised, one she retain, then other maybe in the coming years possibilities that she may get infected with breast cancer. So she went for double mastectomy. She removed both the breast. So this is possible, and she's prevented from the disease. She is not liable to breast cancer today. So what is personalized medicine is shifting? Personalized medicine is emphasizing. It is emphasizing from reaction to prevention, and it is going to prevent the susceptibility to disease. The second application is personalized medicine is based on each patient's unique genetic makeup, and it's a big.
Thank you, Professor, for sharing your valuable time and for joining this webinar. On the behalf of our organizing committee, IRFSR and IRS webinars, I would like to present a certificate of appreciation to you, ma'am. Kindly accept it, ma'am. Now, I would like to thank all our sponsors and coordinators. I would also like to thank our president. We're happy to hear your comments and compliments or suggestions at our Facebook and Twitter page. This video will be available shortly in our YouTube channel. Kindly subscribe our official YouTube channel, IRH conferences and seminars for all past and upcoming webinars and expert lectures. Thank you all. See you on another webinar soon. Thank you, Professor, for sharing your valuable time.